And I would agree with all that. I guess I would add to the conversation. I mean, one of the whys is the complexity, right? Like we're at a point now where antibody manufacturing, I'm not going to discredit antibody manufacturers. I mean, and we're seeing such incremental improvement to antibodies, bispecifics, and what we're doing with ADCs now. Like they're supremely complex. At the time, that was the case. That's where we are with cell therapy right now. It's an incredibly complex paradigm, and I think that I don't want your opinion on this. I think that there's often the misperception that the value of the company is in the final product, and that's not the case in biotech. Certainly not in cell and gene therapy right now, where we're developing the systems, processes, equipment, to make the values there, right? Like at this point. I mean, obviously, there's great value in a product like the one that you just had approved, Tecelera, that has clinical benefit that we haven't seen in a long time, and is stepping in where we haven't seen advances in 10 years. But Adaptimmune was valuable before that approval. So I'm interested in your perspective on that. Like, as you look at the way that the cell therapy space is playing out, the development of the capabilities and processes and equipment, how does that relate to the valuation that we're putting on all these cell therapy companies that are popping up?
Yeah, I think that's a critical point, and I think the starting point for me is that if you think about how pharmaceutical companies and biopharmaceutical companies create value, you think back, think any large pharma company. Once upon a time, they weren't very large. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
incidentally, once upon a time they were a lot smaller, and they became successful because they captured sometimes a particular technology, but much more often than a particular technology, is they managed to find a way of integrating multiple technologies along a value creation chain that starts with target identification and goes through identifying the right compounds and then testing those compounds in vitro, in vivo, and then being able to make them, and then being able to do the clinical trials effectively and assess the patients effectively. So there's all sorts of technology around that in translational technologies, etc. And then ultimately be able to bring that to market, file a regulatory file, which takes a specific set of knowledge associated with that. And I would argue that actually the individual components of those technologies have a certain value, but what pharma managed to get right was the integration of all those technologies into capabilities to say, well, this isn't just a technology play. This is, I can develop this medicine. I can discover a new drug against a target. So that's the integration of a lot of technologies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as new modalities play out, and you think about this for biopharmaceuticals versus small molecules, you think about it for oligonucleotides, and now I think about it for cell therapy, cell and gene therapy. As these new modalities play out, I think one of the interesting things is that the integration, those technologies might differ, and the integration of them differs. So the capabilities that you're building from the integration of these technologies and people and processes, etc., look very different for a cell therapy company than they do for a small molecule company. And as the new modality is developed, and we're the first solid tumor. There's a few CARs out there. There's some TILs coming through as well. All different types of cell therapies. As those therapies get developed, those capabilities get framed up properly and built by the companies that are trying to do them. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they're all internal. They can be outsourced as well, depending on the maturity of the market.
Mm-hmm.
But those technologies, the integration of those technologies into capabilities is critical. And for cell therapy, those capabilities look very different to the capabilities for a small molecule. And I think they have intrinsic value. But they really only have intrinsic value because they enable you to develop products through them. Ultimately, the real value creation point in this industry is when a patient patient goes to a doctor, the doctor prescribes a medicine or a treatment, and the patient receives that treatment. The patient gets value, benefit from that, and somebody pays for it. That's the value creation point. And so the reason I think these capabilities are valuable is because they enable you to develop those products. I don't think you can develop cell therapy products without cell therapy development, discovery, development, and delivery capabilities.
Yeah. And Adaptimmune has developed those capabilities internally and is in fact manufacturing T-Cellra internally, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
we are.
So
Above me here in the Navy Yard.
Yeah, right above you there. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that. So you joined the company in 2015 as chief financial officer, as I said, CEO in 2019. What went into this decision to internalize the development of these capabilities that you speak of? And I, I mean, we look at we've been referring to antibodies. Like I don't know that there's outside of like big pharma and maybe some mid and larger size players. I don't know that there's a single antibody development company out there that's going, oh yeah, we completely want to put a shovel in the ground and build, brick and mortar facilities. Although, who knows with the Biosecure Act that could be changing. There's some outside influences that are maybe going to mess with that. Cell therapy, I know it's different. Like I know that a lot more of this stuff is internalized. But as CFO of the company, go back to those days, the CFO of the company, at that stage in the therapeutics development, what went into that decision making process around building versus buying?
So starting point, fundamentally, what are you trying to do? Define a strategy, align resources around that strategy very tightly, and then execute on it. So if you think about that question's really a why. Why is it strategically critical to build cell therapy manufacturing in-house? Because if you accept that it is, then it's a fairly simple decision to finance it. And I think there's a number of reasons why we think that is. One, the market was and still remains pretty immature, actually, in terms of an external market to go and source those capabilities for. And that is actually similar to how it was in the late 90s, early 2000s, first decade of this century, for biopharm companies. So, if you look at that generation of biopharm companies, the ones who successfully brought product to market, most of them did make the decision to invest in biopharm manufacturing. And they then subsequently also made the decision to sell that biopharm manufacturing and lease it back, or to actually not build the next plant and just subcontract that from somebody in usually a lower cost jurisdiction as well. And so I think that's because over that time period, the market matured, but also, and this is the sort of second reason why doing this in-house at the moment makes sense. The technology became essentially commoditized, commoditized and transparent. So one of the things that is a key challenge in the cell therapy space is, and I'm going to state as a definitive statement what is actually a graduated statement, but we don't really know why cell therapies work in some patients and don't work in other patients. The complexity that you referred to earlier about is inherent to the product, and it's probably why the product is effective, or a large part of it is why the product is effective. So, you think about the cells here. We call these things CD19 CAR T cells, or for T-Cellra, we say that it's a MAGE-A4 targeting T cell, TCR T cell. But in reality, that's because we call it that because that's the bit that we changed. That's the bit we edited, and we inserted new gene in to get it to do that. in reality, that cell is doing, 150,000 other things all at the same time. And those other things are quite important when it comes to what the efficacy is. And so you can change what that cell does genetically by inserting new genes in, CARs or enhanced TCRs. And you can insert other genes as well to get it to do other specific things. But you can also change how that cell performs by how you make it. And in a way that is orders of magnitude more important than it is for glycosylation patterns on monoclonal antibodies.
Yeah.
And so the manufacturing of cell therapies defines, it's not just that it defines that this product is that thing, it actually defines the efficacy and the safety of that product. And so as when we think about that, if we don't understand how that really works, and yet there's so much knowledge to be gained about what an effective cell looks like and how you can define that through the manufacturing process, it was key to us from an early stage that we had to have control of that, because it doesn't just enable us to service patients on a patient by patient basis and everyone needs to be right. It also gives us incredibly valuable information about what constitutes a good cell therapy product that you feed back into your research organization, into your translational organization, and you change your GMP manufacturing to produce better product iteratively. And so therefore it goes from being something that is a means by which you produce your product to something that actually defines what your product is, and therefore is much more strategically important if you're interested in getting the best possible cell product over time.
Yeah.
So that's why we did it, and I dread to think what would have been the situation if we had not had manufacturing in-house when we went to do the BLA with the FDA, because not having control of that would have been, I think, very problematic.
Was financing that initiative as simple as giving your stakeholders that profoundly eloquent justification that you just gave me? Was it that easy?
No, I don't think it was. And to be clear, the first 8 years, 7 years of the company, we were using exclusively outsourced cell manufacturing. It was our experience with that, which was variable, and the starting of being able to finance the company properly that made us make that shift. One of the sort of pivots was in 2014, we did our first major financing as a company. We'd previously been financed in the UK by high net worth individuals in the UK. We did our first proper financing, private round, and then 6 months later we went public. And that private round brought in OrbiMed and NEA and some new board members, many of whom had experience with biofarms. And there was a discussion at their very first board meeting after that, which is we have to be a manufacturing tower of strength if we are going to be successful developing this pipeline. So that combined with the ability to pay for it, the financing, private and then public, was what sort of triggered that investment in this facility.
Yeah. What are you seeing in this space now in terms of the appetite for internal manufacturing investment? Is it changing at all? I mean, do you see it like is it changing one way or the other? Like is it becoming more acceptable to say, hey, we need more money because we need to, own this process development, this manufacturing capability, or is it going the other way because we're starting to see some maturation of the technology and some, better equipped outsourcers pop up?
Yeah. I think both things are true. I think that they're both. The field is expanding. I think the autologous cell therapy field is expanding. I think there are now much more mature, credible third-party CDMOs, including those that will take your process from very early stages and sort of provide that sort of outsourced process development and manufacture sort of in one flow in a way that is suitable for cell therapies, which meets the requirements of autologous cell therapy. So I think that does now exist. However, I do think people are very definitely now looking though at the fact that if you want to be commercial, then you have to think about, well, obviously doing at least your pivotal trial out of the same manufacturing facility that you want to commercialize out of, and possibly even you want to go before that. And so there is I think there's also an increasing understanding that continuity of that manufacturing makes sense. So if you can afford to build that out yourself, if you have a pipeline, then I think there are companies like Iovance across the road from us here who have gone that route. Autolus is another one that's investing in internal manufacturing. And so I do think there is the opportunity to still support manufacturing for significant products. The pipeline discussion is important, though, because these things only really work at some level of scale.
Yeah.
And so if you only have one product, and you don't have the need for that iteration that I talked about, because you're never going to have another product, and then actually outsourcing might be a very credible way of doing this. And I think it is starting to be feasible. I think it will take another 10 to 15 years before we're in the same position as the biopharm industry is now in, where you wouldn't even think about building in-house unless you were a very, very large company with a very, very large product.